area, think RPI, RPA. It's your only two choices. They're both the same system as far as a mesial rest and a distal guide plane. They vary based upon the class. Both are infravulge classes. Unless there's a contraindication to an I-bar, you should only be thinking RPI. The literature all supports that this case on this side should be treated with RPI. If you have a contraindication to an I-bar, like a high frenum attachment, or a large bony exostosis, or no mid-buckle undercut, then you might think about using an RPA. Otherwise, RPI. Anytime you have a space, Dr. Payne's rule, put a rest on each side of the space and make your life simple. All right? Dr. Smith has a rule that he never likes to go more than 8 teeth. 6 teeth. This one's 8. This is his drawing. But you guys know better whatever he said in lecture. But he doesn't like to skirt more than 6 or 8 teeth without putting a rest. All right? Remember fulcrum lines. If you have a fulcrum line in a class 1 or a class 2 partial, when you have a fulcrum line, you don't put a class anterior to the fulcrum line. Okay? So we're going to class this tooth, but we are not going to have clasps on these teeth. These are indirect retainers now. Fulcrum line is here. Indirect retainer anterior to it and perpendicular to the fulcrum line at a spot that's convenient to place it. Much easier to cut an occlusal rest than it is to cut the cingulum rest. So I'm going to put it in that mesial fossa. Alright? Big mistakes on the test. Not scalloping the plate. Putting a distal rest on this tooth instead of a mesial rest.
Good morning there, buddy.
Putting a clasp anterior to the fulcrum line. Incentive not to do that, you get to spend some very close one-on-one time with Dr. Smith. Okay? So, just spend tonight thinking about it and clearing your head. It's very easy. It's very cookbook. Just follow some of those rules. Throw up another cast here. This happens to be the same one. This happens to be a tube tooth. And this would have been drawn where the acrylic probably was drawn down below the metal in the drawing, because this metal has been thinned all the way down to prepare it to be covered with acrylic. So again, you can put it with the metal outside the acrylic outside the metal, or put the line on the same spot. When you draw this lingual plate, oops, there we go. When you draw this lingual plate, remember we want 180-degree encirclement of this tooth. So you want to draw that lingual plate back as far as you can without crossing the line angle back here, so you get good encirclement of that tooth. Your plate should be at or above the height of contour and not interfering with the plane of occlusion. Okay? This is providing your reciprocation. If you use a circumferential clasp, like here, then on the other side, you either need a plate for reciprocation, or you need another circumferential arm that doesn't dip into the undercut. It's drawn totally above super bulge, totally above the height of contour. Either one will provide reciprocation. So here, this is a class 1. So we automatically know on the E-pendulous sides, and in this case it's class 1, so there's 2, we're going to have a mesial rest and a distal guide plane. It's a given. And then we're going to have an I-bar unless it's contraindicated. The I-bar is going to be mid-buckle or slightly mesial.
That's even me being from another country.
I-bar encircles your undercut mark. It goes up and touches the height of contour and comes back down. Remember, this window that is formed right here needs to be 3 by 3 to keep from pinching that tissue. If not, drop your I-bar down a little bit further, or if you absolutely have to, he's okay with you working this portion of it just a little bit mesial to open up that window. He drew this side as an RPA. Note, with the RPA, you still have the undercut mark right at that tip, right at the bottom edge of the clasp, but notice that the entire clasp is below the height of contour, because RPA is an infra-bulge clasp. The reason I don't particularly like an RPA clasp is because since this whole entire clasp is in the undercut, the lab has to block this out with wax. So if you turned your partial upside down and looked, you would see a space right in here, underneath that clasp arm. To me, that's just a flak trap way to catch every piece of spinach you're going to eat. So I don't particularly like an RPA. In this case, there is no contraindication to it. There's no high frenum attachment. There's no phony exhaustosis. Unless I couldn't have found a mid-buckle undercut, I have no reason to not use an I-bar there. They used a lingual bar. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not contraindicated in this case. As long as you could stay off the free gingival margin, keep your bar the right width. My argument is on the test, plate it. Why worry about following all the rules? If you plate it, you don't really have any rules other than to scallop the top edge and stay above the frenum.
I like that idea.
Fulcrum line in this case is here. So you need no clasps anterior to the fulcrum line, but you need an indirect retainer. You have no choice for indirect retainers but the cingulum rest on the cane. Acrylic meets the framework at a butt joint. Acrylic goes all the way down to the vestibule. And I question, because this cast, I pulled it out of his drawer over here. I doubt that this is his drawing. Number one, it's a little sketchy. It's a little light. And this meshwork drops down a little far on the lingual because it's left the gap between the metal and the acrylic very narrow here. And I would rather see this open lattice up a little bit higher on the ridge with these windows moved up just a little bit so that we have a little bit more thickness to our framework. Very important that when you draw a design like this is a class 3 mod 1, okay? When you're drawing this design, you notice the major connector here continues to run all the way back and into the I-bar or up into the guide plate or however you decide to design this tube. But the point is the major connector continues through the area of the tube tooth or the meshwork or the open lattice or the bead, whatever you're putting in here, that major connector continued all the way back. If you stop your major connector here and bring this off from the lattice work or the meshwork, then this is what he refers to as the minor connector coming off from the minor connector. I'm sorry, major connector coming off from the minor connector. And because this major connector runs all the way back here, this is better supported. So you want to be sure that you don't end your framework too soon and come up here and then have your mesh work and then have your direct retainer back here hanging off the mesh work. Another reason that we do see that, probably too in the class, but enough. In this case, he carried the acrylic down outside, and that's fine. Mandibular molars, because they have the natural tilt towards the lingual, oftentimes you'll find your better undercut on here, on the lingual, than you will on the buccal. That doesn't let you out of having a reciprocating arm. You still have to have, if you have retention here, which in this case they did, there's your red retentive mark, then we have to have something to reciprocate it on this side, in which case they used a circumferential flask that's above the height of contour. The height of contour mark is far down here. So as long as you keep that above the height of contour, it's going to provide your reciprocation. Because this is tooth bound, class 3, we can have distal rests, so we can have a rest on each side of the space, which is what I like. They place an indirect retainer here, you wouldn't have had to have it. But I like it, I would do it. But because there's no full front line, we don't technically have to have that indirect retainer. But we need a rest on each side of the space, and we need the 4 clasping systems. Again, they use the lingual bar here. Could they have come up here and done a lingual plate? Nothing wrong with that. In this case, for a class 3, it might have been a little bulky for the patient, so I might not do that as much in clinical practice, but on the test and then it's going to be a lot easier for me. The key to doing that lingual plate, by the way, the only other place that I've seen students marked off for doing the lingual plate is if they didn't mark the survey line on the lingual of these teeth. Okay? If you're going to do a lingual plate, you need to demonstrate where the height of contour is on the lingual, because you need to show that your plate is above it. It's always going to be down here on these caps. It's always going to be down here at the tissue. So I know you're going to be above it. You know you're going to be above it. But we need to mark the pencil line to show that you did think about the height of contour and demonstrate that you knew you were above that height of contour. And scallop the edge, and you'll be fine.
How come you didn't remind me?
What?
Again, just my preference. This I say would be a tooth drawing, because it looks kind of sketchy to me. It doesn't look like a crisp Dr. Smith drawing. Nice butt joint here. Don't forget your stop. Don't forget your tripod marks. These are gimmies. You just get those points. But they're easy points to forget. Don't forget to mark the guide planes. I don't like these 2 windows. It seems really weakens the framework, pinches the tissue. Not something I would encourage doing to drop down, come up, drop down, come back up. I would have inflated the lingual to be numbered. I would have just come right across here and come on around into my rest, and come on around into my rest and drop down. Or come on across with the plate. Same thing here, created 2 windows. My experience over 26 years, you put this in a patient's mouth within a month, you're going to see, within a month, you're going to see this tissue balloon out and pucker right out of this hole. And it's going to be red, and it's going to be inflamed, and it's going to be sore. Because it's being pinched. And it doesn't like to be pinched. Does that help? I think I'm done.